welcome to HFFC's monthly meeting, our featured speaker program. So tonight, it's April, and we are focusing on energy conservation. But more than that, we're focusing on local action. In this world that we live in, we have to think to ourselves, what can we do locally? How can we make a difference? And I know each and every one of us is thinking about that. And one place where we can make a difference is in supporting local initiatives for energy conservation and energy resources, reducing the cost of our energy in Connecticut, which is a big deal for everyone. So tonight, I'm really pleased that we have with us Peter Millman, who is the Vice President for People's Action for Clean Energy, also known as PACE. PACE is a public health and environmental organization formed in 1973 by a group of concerned citizens. One of their projects is 100% Connecticut, an alternative to nuclear energy and fossil fuel. This project develops local viable plans for individual towns and the state to help us become 100% renewable energy. So Peter has been working on clean energy initiatives for over 10 years. In 2015, he started Connecticut Green Energy News. He's led a number of PACE initiatives, notably Community Choice Aggregation, which is what he's going to talk about to us tonight. He has a BA from RISD in architecture and a master's in urban planning from University of Washington. With that, I would like to turn it over to Peter.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Anita. I wanted to start by saying that this all started for me around 2018. I first heard about Community Choice Aggregation, which was started in Massachusetts in around 1997. I heard about it, and I thought it sounded pretty good. I began asking around all the energy folks I knew, most of whom I thought knew more than me, and they did. But no one had heard of it. The more I learned, the more I liked. And I kept asking myself, if it's good enough for Massachusetts and New York and a few other states, why not here? That's the question I kept asking. Why not here? I worked on it pretty hard in 2019, 20, 21, and then I let it drop until 2024, really. But the question kept at me, which is, why not here? So community power for Connecticut is how I've thought of this. For Connecticut, it would be a way for Connecticut municipalities to play a much larger role than they now can in the energy transition by letting them help lower electricity supply rates and develop local energy projects and programs. So just a few facts about community power, community choice. CCA exists in one form or another in about 10 states, most notably for us, New York, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, California. At its root, it allows municipalities to become the default electricity suppliers for all their residents and businesses, except for those who opt out. It's worth mentioning that no taxpayer funds are used in these programs. Revenues come from the sale of electricity in other deployment. This is all in addition to, not instead of, state-funded programs. To make this even more real to you, I wanted to play this 3-minute video from the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. I think it'll give you a better sense of what I'm talking about.
CPC&H is a nonprofit organization that is helping communities meet their energy needs. We're providing innovation to those communities, and we're making sure that their voices are heard down in Congress.
So the coalition is the only organization in the state that was founded specifically for this purpose, to do community power for cities and towns, by cities and towns. It's a transformative way for communities to have a seat at the table in the decisions about where they're getting their power from, where the revenues from the sale of electricity are going to, and how they can have some control over that and use those revenues for future benefits.
We're a grassroots movement, but are working with some of the best professionals in the industry to bring state-of-the-art energy services to New Hampshire communities.
Not all communities are the same. You know, some communities are going to want to emphasize certain things. Some are going to want to go with as low cost as possible to make sure that, you know, let's face it, some folks are on fixed incomes and you want to try to keep those costs as low as possible.
We wanted to offer the best energy price we could to our residents and businesses.
The renewable has always been the goal of the community.
Local control is also a big consideration for us.
It feels like I'm a part of something that's very innovative and exciting.
And it allows me to represent my community better.
Each individual town doesn't have to figure all this out on their own. They can benefit from the experiences of the communities that have already started, and we can share professional resources. So each town doesn't have to build up that internal capacity.
It's pretty straightforward for new towns that want to participate in these programs. There's a full suite of services for planning and launching these programs.
CPC&H definitely gives you the tools and the resources to get a program started up at an expedited rate. The savings we've received from community power are astounding to me.
There's now 50 cities and towns working together through this coalition statewide. It's 25%, approaching 30% of the state's populations. So there is a lot of buying power across all the communities, and we see more and more communities signing up every day now that the model's sort of been proven out by the first movers.
I can't think of a time anywhere in New England where you've seen this kind of innovation that's happening. We are a member services, community-driven organization. The only reason we exist is to give value back to communities. If you're thinking about changing or moving to community power aggregation or taking control of your energy needs, CPC&H helps make that process easy for you.
Just a little more about New Hampshire. In the first year, CPC&H saved their customers $14 million. I want to say that that doesn't translate to a huge amount of dollars for each individual ratepayers, but it's a significant amount of money. And then they also were able to put away $10 million into a reserve fund for those future projects and programs.
How is that working in Connecticut?
I started working on this back in 2018. Some friends and I became very serious about it in 2019, 20, 21. Let's move to 2025. So this was the year that there was a really big push to introduce legislation into the 2025 legislature. And why this year? I think it has its roots in 2024, really, when there was a lot of concern growing about the cost of electricity. I mean, it's been going on for a long time, but if you recall, in the summer of 2024, there was a lot of outrage at the sudden rise in electricity bills. There's also a lot of frustration with the status quo in energy policy, the pace and direction of progress. And that had to do with that in the 2024 legislature, there was an omnibus climate bill put together. It had 20 or so distinct parts, and yet that died in the Senate at the end of the session, essentially Republicans talking out the clock at the end. A Republican in 2024 also introduced a municipal aggregation bill. Her name was Holly Cheeseman, I think from Milford, but I'm not sure. And I have to say that it did not receive a lot of attention. I didn't notice it until well into the session. Did not get a lot of support, but it was a possibility that maybe Republicans could get behind this too. And based on all of these factors, I, along with some other people, started building a coalition in the fall of 2024. That all culminated in a raised bill, 6928. There were actually some bills earlier in the session. I think it was 5 legislators sponsored a bill, just a general bill. My collaborator, Mark Sassy of Bridge Energy, and I submitted legislative language to the committee.
But this is what came out of it. And this was a bill written by the committee, and it was raised. That is, the committee, after hearings, thought it was worthwhile at least writing a bill. So who supported community power? This bill was actually called Municipal Electric Aggregation. So from back in the effort in 2019, 2020, I think it was 6 municipalities passed resolutions formally supporting the concept. Most of these expressed some form of support also in 2024, 2025. Fairfield, the town, passed a resolution, mostly due to the hard work of John Kuhn of their representative town meeting. And Woodbridge wrote a very strong letter to the committee, signed by the first selectman. So it had real backing, credibility, and served as a municipal resolution. I think with more work, we could get more municipal resolutions. Back in 2019, 2020, got a lot of organizations to sign on. This is the list from this year, from 2025. Sierra Club, Bridge Energy, Save the Sound, Connecticut League of Conservation Law Foundation. But it was a good turnout of municipalities and energy sector organizations and lots of individuals. Again, that bill, HB 6928, became the formal bill. There was a hearing before the Energy and Technology Committee on February 18th of this year. Of the submitted testimony that expressed support or opposition, 70 submitted written testimonies were supportive, for example, from all those organizations that I showed before, but also many individuals. And there were 4 submissions that opposed it. Yet the bill was not voted out of committee. And while theoretically, and maybe on some occasions this does happen, a bill cannot be voted out of committee, but then revived during full session, it's not going to happen for this bill, and has not happened. So why didn't, what happened? Why didn't this bill pass, or at least get voted out of committee? There were really 2 or 3 or 4 reasons. One is that Senator Norm Needleman of Essex, a Democrat, has been suspicious of community choice aggregation from the first time I think he ever heard of it, back in 2019, I would say. He was against it then, and he is still against it. And as the co-chair of the committee, he has a lot of influence on what happens. How did he get his point of view? Well, there is a guy named John Erlinghauser of the Connecticut chapter of AARP, who has also been adamantly against CCA as long as he's known about it. I believe that there was a pilot program proposed for Bridgeport maybe 12 years ago, maybe more. I've heard rumors of it. I don't know that much about it, but I also heard that he shot that down way back then. In 2019, he made it very clear to me and everybody else that he still hated this, CCA. One other factor I think played a role. The Office of Consumer Counsel, headed by Claire Coleman, wrote testimony in which she said that the office was not opposed in principle to community choice aggregation, but they did have some real concerns about the consumer protection aspects of the bill as it was written. Unfortunately, the timing on writing a response to the Office of Community Counsel and getting them to, having a meeting, it just didn't work out soon enough, assuming that it would have had a positive outcome, to influence the committee. I should also mention 2 things. One is Claire Coleman is a very well-respected member of the regulatory community in Connecticut government, and for good reason. She is a wonderful person and a wonderful regulator. So I don't begrudge her concerns, but I think that we could have responded well to all of them. And then there was some real support on the committee. There were probably a good 6, 7, or 8 Democratic supporters, including the other co-chair, Jonathan Steinberg, who is a well-respected guy, and for good reason. I thought we might get a few Republicans for a few reasons, one of which was that of the towns that passed resolutions, Many of them passed unanimously, which meant that there were Republican supporters, but it wasn't going to happen this year in the legislature. So what's next? As I discussed, we have to have a prolonged discussion with the Office of Consumer Counsel and see whether we can turn them around. We need to consult with members of the Energy and Technology Committee to see how we could do this better and whether there are any minds to be changed. And then we would certainly want to try to add more municipalities, organizations, and individuals to the coalition. I think that's where I'm going to stop at this point. I would be glad to take your questions.
I've followed your work for quite a while, and I've always been impressed with it, Peter, but I was surprised to see on the list of the coalition of entities that supported that bill, that CCM, the Connecticut Council of Municipalities, was on that list. So it's pretty amazing, I think, that they endorsed this. Can you tell us how it is that they came on board?
Yeah, at the risk of spinning out too long a yarn, let me just start with that. In 2024, a number of people or groups got in touch with me and said, hey, what happened to community choice aggregation? We're interested. One of them was an energy services company called Bridge Energy. The vice president is Mark Sassy. It's a Connecticut company, I believe, although they operate in other states. One of the things that I was heartened by was that Bridge Energy would bring contacts and expertise to the effort to bring community choice to Connecticut. And it was really Mark who I think enlisted Connecticut Council of Municipalities and also the Connecticut Council of Small Towns. Although I had been speaking over the years to Connecticut Council of Municipalities, they were always interested. They always said, sounds like a good idea, but they never signed up to support. So that was Mark, because one of the things he does is to provide energy services to Connecticut municipalities. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you.
If you enjoyed this video, you might like one of the similar videos above, or one of the other science, art, legislative, entertainment, and humanist videos from HFFC's YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button above.